Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
My name is Susan Brender, and I'm the host of the Susan Brender Show. Rena Greenberg is my guest today, and boy, am I happy she's on. She's going to talk about success with weight loss, hypnosis, and gastro bypass hypnosis, and she's been featured in about 150 news stories, including USA Today, Women's World Magazine, The Doctor Show, CNN, Good Morning America, and ABC-TV Nightline. I want to welcome to the Susan Brender Show, Rena Greenberg.
Hi, Susan. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, Rena, you've been involved in wellness programs that have been reviewed and sponsored in 75 hospitals and 100-plus major corporations, including Walt Disney World, AT&T, and Home Depot since 1990.
Yes. It's been a wonderful journey bringing these wellness programs to all these hospitals and all these companies. And basically, you know, my message is all about empowerment. It's all about changing the way we think about food and, of course, the cigarettes subconsciously, so that it just makes it easier to naturally choose healthier foods, smaller portions, increase activity without feeling deprived or denied, without feeling as if we're on a diet. So interestingly, all these hospitals welcomed me to offer this program, and it's behavior modification with hypnotic conditioning. So I'm teaching people a form of self-hypnosis so that rather than struggling and dieting, it's more about changing the subconscious images that we hold in our mind about ourselves and food.
Now, you just mentioned the word behavior modification. I want you to explain to our audience what that really is.
Of course, you know, naturally, when we're doing something that's harmful to ourselves, of course we have to change the behaviors. And when we're working just with a conscious level, of course, we all know exactly what we need to do. So that's why you hear people say, you know, I know exactly what foods I need to be eating. And I know my clients come to me all the time and they say, you know, Rena, I could write a book about weight loss. I mean, I know every, you know, carbs and calories and fat grams and all this. But the bottom line is, why aren't we doing it? Well, so the behavior modification, to answer your question, is changing those behaviors. So drinking more water, choosing healthier foods, increasing activity, choosing smaller portions. But the other piece to that is changing the way we think about ourselves subconsciously so we can make those behavioral changes easily and effortlessly without always feeling like it's a struggle.
You know, Rena, it's very interesting because we live in a world today where it's a fast-paced world. It's a world where the computer just rules your life, where you're so busy. Everybody seems to be so busy. So how can they do the things that you are suggesting?
You know, it's a good point, Susan, and we do. It's a very, very fast-paced world. But the interesting thing is that so much of our behavior is just based on our habits. You know, it's really that simple. And even, you know, how much we do or don't use the computer, a lot of that is a habit. And we're driven by these habits. And we may say to ourselves, you know, consciously, we may wake up and say, you know, I'm only going to check my emails once today. Or I am going to eat healthy food today. And, you know, by noon, it's all over. Why is that? Well, because we're programmed to keep doing the things we've been doing yesterday. So it's really about changing the behaviors and breaking those habits. But we have to access the power of the subconscious mind because, you know, if we could have done it with the conscious mind alone, well, just as you said, we already would have done it. But even though it's a fast-paced world, there's no need to give up because we still are driven by our habits. And once we change those, it really doesn't matter what's going on outside ourselves because we're driven from a deeper place within ourselves that's giving us new messages. And that's what we start to listen to. So what I mean by that is the new message can be, you know, the old me was going to get up in the morning and just go straight to the emails and the computer, but instead I'm going to go outside and take a walk. And so we start to, and so it's not enough, that's where it starts, is making the decision. And then with the hypnosis, that's why I love hypnosis, and that's what I do, is because we have to reprogram, we have to really rewrite the script and the mental movie so that can just feel like the new normal. So you wake up and say, well, the old me would have sat down and eaten, 2 muffins and French toast, but instead I'm going to get out and take a walk and feel really good about it.
Well, a friend of mine writes a special bulletin, I suppose, or blog, and she calls it Eat Simply and Live Joyfully. Now, what do you think of that?
That is fabulous. And that's exactly, I think what a wonderful way to strive to live. Eat simply, live joyfully. And it's true because sometimes life just gets so out of control, complicated, but it's up to each of us to simplify ourselves by changing the subconscious programs that are ruling us, basically starting a new inner conversation with ourselves. And when we do simplify, that is really the key to living joyfully, because all this stress and busyness, if you stop to really think about it, Susan, it really doesn't make any of us happier. And isn't that all that we all really want, is just happiness and inner peace? And even all the foods that we're eating, all that processed junk and foods full of chemicals, whether diet foods or not, it doesn't make us happy. It just feels like more deprivation, more denial. And it's shifting that thinking. And when we change the way we think about ourselves and our relationship with food, we can really follow that advice, which is to really just eat simply and live joyfully. Absolutely. And that's why, my program is called Easy Willpower, and it's really about making that willpower to do that easy. It doesn't have to be a struggle.
Now, it's very interesting what you say, and very realistic for some people, but think about this. Think about what it's like to be in a world, as we mentioned before, that is just so stressful, and so many people are, as we said again before, working hard, and their bosses, the society makes them want to strive more to success. And while they're doing that, they really have no time to think, as you say, simply and joyfully. It's really a conundrum that we're dealing with today. So tell us, I'm just mentioning all of this, but I want to know more about the Easy Willpower television special, because there must have been things that you suggested in that show.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes, that was a show that aired nationally on PBS. Actually, it's still airing now in some parts of the country. So, yes, it's been airing the last couple of months on PBS stations throughout the country, and the show is called Easy Willpower. And there are a lot of tips and hints because, you're so right, Susan. This world is crazy and chaotic, but if we let ourselves be ruled by those outer forces, we're always going to feel just like we can't measure up, and it's that thinking that I can't do enough, I can't be enough, and even I can't, eat enough. Like there's no amount that's really going to make a difference. And you're right, a lot of times getting those messages. So, and we are living in this physical world. So what do we do about that? But it's so interesting because even if we just take a few minutes a day, and that's kind of what I teach with the self-hypnosis, just a few minutes a day. And my clients say it makes such a huge difference to center ourselves and to give ourselves a new message. So the old message might be, work hard or you're not good enough. But if we just stop to get into a new habit of maybe taking a couple of deep breaths and going within and connecting to the heart and saying, what is it that I'm really, really needing? So sometimes just asking ourselves a question, what am I really needing? And if we start to realize that we're being ruled by our own mental movie, so sometimes it's not even just that the boss outside of us is yelling or demanding something, but a lot of times it's internal. Like we have these inner voices that are telling us we're not good enough, it's not enough. And so much of the time we think that what's driving us is what's outside of us, but often we've internalized those voices. So what I'm suggesting is that with Easy Willpower, the point is to start a new conversation with ourselves. And so I actually, with Easy Willpower, give people the tools, the self-hypnosis techniques, even if you just have a few minutes a day, to start to write a new script for yourself that says, I am doing enough. I am good enough. And what do I really need? What choices do I want to make? And, for example, when it comes to food, do I really want to eat this? How's that going to make me feel? And, nowadays, one of the positive things about how the world is going now is that it's easier to make a healthy choice in a lot of ways than it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, because there are more healthy foods available so that we at least pick something that's a little bit healthier than we may have if we hadn't stopped to question what we're doing.
Rena, one of the things that I was thinking about is that there are chains, all these chains. I don't want to just put McDonald's as the one that is the most, how shall we say, not
prominent, yeah.
Yeah, prominent is a good word for that. Now, how do you fight companies that are so powerful and they send a message to everyone that it's okay to eat their hamburgers, their French fries, all those things? They smell. They do something that is very interesting. There is a smell that comes from their restaurants, their chains, and it smells so good. How do you fight the message that they're bringing?
That's a great point. And I don't think we really can. I think you're absolutely right. How are we supposed to fight a company like McDonald's? And as you said, there are so many others. We really can't. But what we can do is think for ourselves and start to notice how we feel when we eat those foods. So we want to start with really making a connection. So usually when you eat those kind of fast foods, you think about the whole event. So before you eat the food, you're exactly just like you're saying, that smells good, that looks good, and we're being completely manipulated. I mean, they're spending billions of dollars on research to figure out how to manipulate our senses, our taste, our smell, and even the packaging. Every single piece of that is being manipulated, is being researched. And so the point is that we, each and every one of us, can decide for ourselves that is this really true? Like, is this really true? How do I feel after I eat it? And for most of us, there's a moment that comes. It could be 5 minutes after we had that burger, fries, and Coke. It could be an hour later. It may be the next day. But at some point, you wake up and you say, I feel gross. Why did I eat that? That is just sitting in my stomach. And it's that moment that we want to start remembering how that food makes us feel before we eat the food and not after. And then what happens is we start to reprogram the mind by repeating that mental movie. So just like advertising constantly repeats and repeats, that's why with hypnosis, it's something that I recommend we do even every single day. Again, even just for a few minutes a day, but we start to repeat and remind ourselves, I don't even want that. So there's a big difference between thinking I really want it, but I'm on a diet, I'm not going to have it, which, of course, as you know, it makes you want it more. And rather, the opposite is just saying, remembering how bad you feel. And maybe even you're one of those lucky ones that doesn't feel bad physically, but mentally, emotionally, when's that point where you feel really guilty, like you wish you hadn't eaten it? And it's recalling that before you eat it, so you just don't even want it anymore. And then we want to embed that new memory in the subconscious part of the mind so it gets easier and easier. So you're not really fighting, Susan. You're actually just easily and effortlessly, slowly but surely, you're changing the way you relate to McDonald's or any of those other fast food companies to the point where it's disgusting and you just don't even want it anymore, and that's freedom.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of questions that you ask your audience, not only in your show, but in your practice. And some of the questions you ask are this: are you struggling with your weight or your health? The next thing you ask is, are you uncomfortable in your own body? Well, we're going to go on with the rest of the questions, but why do you ask those questions in particular?
That's a great point, and we want to start with really making the decision that we can't keep going the way we're going, and really realizing, I am uncomfortable, and I don't want to live this way anymore. And then it's believing, having that faith that we don't have to live this way anymore. And, I'm really speaking from example. I mean, this was exactly my story. I mean, I was addicted to all the foods you talked about, the sugar, and then not even the obvious forms of sugar, but the fast food and the junk food. And, it came a point where I realized, I'm miserable like this, and I was, the only way I could really control my weight at all was by exercising excessively, which is just, no fun at all. To be that driven, to have to exercise just to keep, your weight in check, which was exactly what was happening for me. And fortunately for me, I got sick at a young age, and it really forced me to take a look at my life and say, this is not acceptable. And that's why I asked those questions, because I think we have to get to that point. And then I was able to develop a method through all the studying of hypnosis, biofeedback, neurolinguistic programming, almost 30 years ago. And I really said, that's it. And I basically just changed the way I ate, changed the way I thought about food. And then I wanted to share, I felt great. I didn't even miss the foods I used to eat. And so when I stopped to analyze, how did I do this? And I was able to develop a program, and that's the program I started to present to those hospitals. And one by one, over 75 hospitals said, this makes sense, and allowed me to come in and share that program with the local community. And I ended up working with over 100,000 people to help them change the way they think about food subconsciously. Because I think slowly, one by one, if we say we're not going to eat those foods anymore, that's really the only way I feel to fight those big food companies.
Yeah. And then you go on to say, do you sometimes feel overwhelmed by the stress in your life? Do you read self-healing books and then beat yourself up because you're not enlightened? I mean, these are some of the other questions you ask. And my question to you is, why those particular questions?
Yeah, well, it's important to realize, as far as beating yourself up, that's such a common thing, perfectionism. And I see that so often with my clients. It's almost like, well, I had a cookie, so I might as well have the whole box. I wasn't perfect, so I might as well blow the whole thing. And when you stop to think about it, in areas of our lives where we're successful, we don't do that. So, you're raising a child, you make a mistake, you think, oh, my goodness, I shouldn't have yelled at my child because, I realized that was a mistake. Well, you don't yell more. You say, okay, I'm going to start to change that behavior. But in certain areas of our life, we have to realize we're not making any sense. We realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have had the cookie, or I had it. Oh, well, no big deal. But instead, well, I might as well blow the whole thing and eat the whole box and start the diet Monday. So I ask these questions because it's a way to start to look at ourselves and say, where I am is not exactly where I want to be, but that's okay, because another way to look at it is, everything you and I have been through has led us to this moment, here and now, ready to begin again, a little bit wiser, with a little bit more information. So I ask those questions as a starting point to say, okay, I'm ready now to start on a new road. And that's really the first step. And then I can give you the tools that work, that can make a difference. But the first step always is making that decision.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's talk about some of the tools, because without those tools, I think that it would be very difficult for people to do it on their own. So what are some of the tools that you kind of provide to the people who come to your practice or are in hospitals and things of that nature?
Yeah, well, right now it's mostly private practice, and I work with people all over the world over the phone and Skype. So that's a wonderful improvement of the modern age, as we like to talk about, how busy it's gotten and all that, how difficult in some arenas life has gotten. But on the other hand, there are some big improvements, and it's wonderful. The miracle of technology is that, it's just amazing to me how I work with people in the Middle East and in Europe and Asia. It's wonderful. So, and of course, my practice is in Bradenton, Florida. So, and many people will come to see me in Florida face to face. And the main thing when I work with someone, it's finding out specifically what the obstacles are. So, what are the goals, and then what are the triggers? What are the obstacles? And then when I guide people through the hypnosis, it's about creating a new mental movie, a new way of thinking about themselves and their lives. And so you're right, people come and they feel so stuck. They've tried to do it on their own, obviously, but it's hard because subconsciously that old program, it's like that old tape, that old record just keeps playing and playing. So I'm giving people, people say to me, it's basically a new conversation. So I had a woman named Jane, and she came to me. She was already in her 60s, and she had struggled with being overweight and actually obese her entire life. And what she said was, after doing the hypnosis with me, and she was so skeptical. She was sure it wouldn't work, but she thought, what the heck? I might as well, give it a try. And she would say, I was in the grocery store, and I went to reach for something, and I heard your voice, not saying bad girl, but do you even want that? And she realized the answer is no. She went on to lose 70 pounds.
Wow.
I know. And she has kept that off now almost 15 years it's been. She's thrilled. She said, I wish I had come, when I was younger. And then every person I work with, I give them a recording. So, CD, MP3. Back then, Jane I'm still in touch with her. She says she still listens to her tape. It was a tape back then. Every now and again, you might say, well, why would she still listen to it? Because we're constantly being hypnotized by advertising, by the media, basically being brainwashed. Basically, someone else trying to control our thoughts. And when we're listening to the hypnosis and doing the self-hypnosis, it's a way of constantly reminding ourselves of what our truth is. And our truth is that we are feeling good, feeling happy, pushing harmful foods away and feeling really good about it, not feeling, confused, releasing the doubt, the fear, and just centering and honoring, asking ourselves what foods are going to nourish me, sustain me, and then changing the thinking so that's what we actually prefer.
Now, Rena, you're talking about the fact that hypnosis is a great way to deal with not all your problems, but particularly the problem of weight gain. Now, for most of our audience, they've never probably experienced hypnosis. So, and I never experienced it. So, it doesn't really help. And describe what the process of hypnosis is.
Okay, thanks. It's funny because when you say most people feel like they've never experienced hypnosis, that could be true, but I always like to bring it down to earth. And I just said it a moment ago, the truth is we're being hypnotized all the time. And we're being hypnotized by the media. We're being hypnotized by the ads that we see on television, the commercials. We're being hypnotized even by the voices in our head, the voices from our past. Someone could have said something to you or you and I maybe 30 years ago, positive or negative. We're still replaying it in our minds. So where's that voice coming from? Well, we've been replaying it so much that now we've internalized it. So to bring hypnosis down to earth, it's very similar to meditation in the sense of it's a state of deep relaxation and focused concentration. But the big difference between hypnosis and meditation is all about going inside and being with what is, just being in the now moment. And that's very, very valuable. But hypnosis takes it a step further because it's actually goal-oriented. So meditation is not goal-oriented, but hypnosis is. Hypnosis is really about setting goals for ourselves and then creating these scenarios through a new conversation, a new inner voice. And it's really the voice of the heart and the soul. So when people say to me down the road, they say, Rena, I hear your voice all the time, but it's not my voice anymore. It's really the inner voice that they then internalize. Just like if we hear the voice of, let's say, a McDonald's commercial, and we've internalized that. So it's very important because mostly, you're right, we're not consciously aware of being hypnotized, of taking on other people's opinions or what they want for us. We don't realize we're even doing it, that we don't even realize we have a choice, but we do. So basically, I'm giving you, my clients new messages. And many people aren't able to work with me personally, and so they'll use the programs that I've developed on CD or MP3 or DVD or just, streaming video. And this is a way to create something very, very positive for ourselves. In fact, I had a woman who, you mentioned the doctor show, Kathy went on the doctor show with me. She's from Texas. I had never met her personally. She lost 120 pounds just using my gastric bypass hypnosis program on CD. She bought the program along with one of my online courses, and she ended up losing 120 pounds, and we went on the doctor show together, so she really wanted to share her story with how she completely turned around her eating habits by changing those inner messages with the hypnosis.
Interesting. Now, when you talk about hypnosis, what I kind of think about is somebody holding a kind of, shall we say, a watch, and they kind of push back and forth, and they put you in a sort of state of mind that is very relaxing. But is that what hypnosis is?
Well, hypnosis is really a state of deep relaxation and focused concentration, and is a very, very natural state. So in hypnosis, you're always in complete control. One way to think of it is every morning when we wake up, we naturally pass through a state of hypnosis, as we do every evening as we're falling asleep. So it's a state, Susan, where you're not quite awake, but you're not asleep anymore either. But you have heightened awareness. So, for example, you may hear a dog barking. You may hear a phone ringing or smell breakfast cooking in the next room. But you're just so relaxed. You could respond to any of these things if you wanted to, but you're just so relaxed you don't want to. And you know how you could fall back asleep and an hour can go by and it seems like 5 minutes. It seems like, oh my gosh, I just closed my eyes and here it is, an hour went by. That's a state of hypnosis. It's a state where you're not awake, you're not asleep. And in that state, where the subconscious mind is much more available to suggestion. So the suggestions I give my clients are all positive. It's none of that, hocus pocus on television or stage hypnosis, which is all about comedy and entertainment. The suggestions I give my clients are all for empowerment. So if they come for weight loss, it's choosing smaller portions, eating healthier foods, increasing activity without feeling deprived, without feeling denied. People come to me for confidence. They come to me to improve their relationships. And through the hypnosis, we're able to help them to change the way they think about themselves and their husband or wife or their partner. And so that's how the behaviors change. It all starts with changing our thinking. And when we change our thinking, our behaviors naturally change. And that's then where we can get to the results that we really desire in our lives.
Does somebody have to be in your office in order to get this hypnosis training?
Oh, absolutely not. As I said, I work with people all over the world over the phone or Skype. But even, no, after I've recorded, I have programs for everything, for opening your heart, self-love, self-forgiveness, for creating a happy marriage, for fearless, stressless. I had a woman, Kathy, who came to me. She actually came to me for weight loss. She lost 130 pounds. And on my website, there's some television stories featured about her because she also went on some of her local television stations. She wanted to share her story. But the thing about this woman, who's Kathy with a C in New Jersey, that is so inspiring, she had phobias. And specifically, she was really afraid of transportation, not just planes, but even buses and trains. It had been 45 years since she had used any kind of public transportation, if you can imagine. And at working with me with the hypnosis, she was able to eliminate that. She is now traveling everywhere on buses, trains, planes, and cruises. She's going on a couple of cruises a year. So she's gotten her life back, freedom. So I've created an at-home program to release fear and anxiety, reduce stress, also to control pain, because these are things that we can all use at home to change our lives for the better.
Yes. And now, you're also an NLP trainer. What's that?
Yes. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming, and it was really around really the 80s, the 90s, and it was created by two psychologists and then became popular worldwide. And it's just a very, very powerful form of hypnosis. And it's all about neurolinguistics. It's really studying how the mind works and how language works, and then using processes to again, reprogram the subconscious mind so that we can do the things we want to do. Because one of the things that's most frustrating, Susan, is we want to do something, we set a goal, and then we're just unable to get through the blocks. And what I do with neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis, and I'm also a nationally board-certified biofeedback therapist, it's all about accessing and awakening the power of the subconscious part of the mind. Really, I also look at it as a power of the soul, the spirit, to help us to lift that consciousness, lift that awareness, so it's not just a thought in the head, but we can actually change the behaviors, and it feels like the new normal.
Now, do psychiatrists and MDs, do they accept some of the, as you say, the NLP training and hypnosis as very legitimate, or do they kind of poo-poo it?
I think the more progressive psychiatrists and medical doctors are accepting it more and more. I mean, think about it. I've been in 75 hospitals. For me to get into even one hospital, each and every one reviewed the program through the administration and the medical team. Many, many doctors sat in on my program, and many of them prodded by their patients who had great results, who quit smoking, with hypnosis with me or lost large amounts of weight. And they really could see for their own eyes. And I think we're all hearing more and more about the power of belief, the power of the mind. And, doctors realize with so many people come in with all these ailments, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, hypoglycemia, and what's really the cure in the medical world? There really isn't insomnia. It's difficult. The doctors really reach a point where what more can they do? And so, yes, I get many referrals from doctors because, of course, they want to help the patients, and they're realizing that for many of them, it's going to be about accessing that power of the mind.
Right. So we're just about at the end of our show, and I always love to give my guest the last word. So what would you tell the audience, Rena? What would you tell them that may give them some hope and some feeling of it's possible?
Yeah, I would say just never give up. And, studies show on a very encouraging note that most people who do succeed failed at least 3 to 5 times in the past prior to the success. So instead of looking at it as a failure, the methods that you've tried that maybe haven't gotten you to achieve your goal, look at them as stepping stones and realize that, now's the time. And if you're feeling, that yearning inside of you, that take that as a sign that it's time, and that nothing's wasted because everything you've been through is cumulative, and now it's just a matter of reaching deep inside and using the tools to really shift that mental movie so you can start to see yourself as your best self. It's like a shift in identity. Remember Superman? I don't know how young your listeners are, but Clark Kent used to go into that phone booth and change his identity,
yeah.
That big S on. And that's what each of us needs to do, and we can. We don't have to keep, repeating the same old story.
Now, if our audience wants to get a hold of your tapes and all the different tools that you use in your practice, how do they do that?
My website is easywillpower.com. That's EASY, so easywillpower.com. And, of course, Facebook, Rena Greenberg, and Greenberg is all E's. And, of course, Easy Willpower as well. And I'd love to hear from you and reach out. I'm available. I can answer questions. I have a lot of free stuff on my site, too, Susan. Actually, there's a whole tab on my menu bar, free stuff. There's about 6 items. And something I just created that I've gotten the best feedback on is a worry-free challenge, 10 days of videos by me and incredible powerful messages each day. Each video is only about 2 minutes and life-changing in and of itself, and it's free.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Rena Greenberg, you've been a fabulous guest, and I would love to have you back in the future to tell our audience more about all the things you're doing and, of course, what's in store for them in the future, because everything's evolving, and there are so many new things on the market, but I'm sure you're really in touch with everything. So please come back to the Susan Brender Show, and it's really a pleasure to have you on my show.
Thank you so much, Susan. It was just a pleasure to talk with you and all your listeners. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.